What's the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack-Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Mma Commentary.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault. He was a retard. I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Iconic or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We know you have a lot of options out there. And we can't do the show without the help of our sponsors. Chemical Free Body has been really good to us. We've had Tim James on the program a couple times. He's the owner of it. You got to check out the website. They have all kinds of things. Let's face it, in 2020, you're going to need your shields up, man. You're going to need some immunity. You're going to need to be operating at full capacity if you're going to deal with the insanity of the coming months. So take a look at chemicalfreebody.com. All their products are certified organic. They're plant-based. They're gluten-free, GMO-free, soy-free, dairy-free, practically free monetarily. Not totally. We do have a promo code, though. Check out, use the promo code MACRO when you're checking out to get a discount. There's free shipping on orders over $99 inside the U.S., and there's also international shipping available as well. So check it out. Just take a look. He's got podcasts. He's got classes. He's got all kinds of things that you can use to help you out. I just ordered a bunch of stuff that should be here pretty soon, so I'll tell you firsthand how it works. But check out chemicalfreebody.com. Use the promo code MACRO. We appreciate it. It helps to support our channel and what we're doing. And what we're doing here is we're getting down to business with one half of the farm, one half of the conspiracy farm, Mr. Jeffery Wilson. How are you, Jeffrey?
I am very well, Charlie. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Good. I'm glad you're on. You ready to get weird? Let's
do these things.
Well, 2020 has been a bit of a mess, in case people have had their heads up their asses for the last 10 months or so. I don't see it getting any calmer with an election coming around. What's the vibe? You guys have a lot of interesting people on Conspiracy Farm. You talk to people that come from a variety of industries. What's the feeling going into these elections? Where are we going?
Well, I mean, it's quite spooky. I mean, as we all have known it, it's the 2016 election was a pretty hefty indication of where we were going. I mean, literally, at my age, I've seen quite a bit of politics in every 4 to 8 years. People are divided, of course, because people think differently politically. But 2016 was a pretty nasty harbinger, relationships were ending. People were stopped speaking with friends and families. And, we said, during that time that the next time around is going to be pretty ugly. And that they're going to divide us on literally, I mean, this is before all this happened. I'm not breaking my arm, patting ourselves in the back. We all could kind of read the tea leaves. But the next time around, they're going to fire on every cylinder, if you will, of division, whether it's racial, political, religious, ethnic, sexual orientation. Now we have mask, no mask. We have Antifa, BLM in the streets. So they're kind of getting exactly what they want. But to answer your question, they've already set up, both sides have set up for not accepting the results of the election. So we're basically going to see what we're already seeing, squared, cubed, if you will, with I don't see any kind of let up anytime in the near future.
It's interesting because if you just measured attention and energy for a client, not for one of the candidates, not even necessarily, doesn't have to be positive energy, just buzz and energy. It's almost all on Donald Trump. I mean, he's got it all. You love him. People that love him enthusiastically love him. They have boat parades. They have truck parades. They have, there's signs everywhere. There is that's how I remember elections being. Signs, signs for both teams everywhere, fairly equal. Enthusiasm for both sides, fairly equal. I guess it kind of depends on where you live. But this time around, I mean, Joe Biden, we've kind of joked like weekend at Bernie's, and he, being propped up and everything. But I feel like he's not even trying anymore. I never even knew there was a thing called calling a lid on media, meaning we're done for the day with media appearances and things like that. And, Biden's camp is saying we're calling for a lid. And that I'd never even heard the term before. Now they're doing it every other day at 9:30 in the morning. They're done with it. They're like, we're calling a lid on the day. It's like, if I didn't know any better, I would think that they had given up. But we see all the polling numbers, and we know the polls are total horseshit. But we still see the polling numbers, and the polling numbers are showing like Biden's ahead by 8 points or 10 points or 12 points. We saw this with Hillary last time around. Yes. The polls were clearly wrong. But are you seeing the same thing? A disproportionate amount of enthusiasm on Trump and almost nothing on the left?
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you see it. And not that it matters. I don't do the right left thing at all. I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a Biden guy. It's more kind of WWE. And, to that point, it's, again, I've been around politics enough where you got the, what was it? 1,000 points of light, very dry speaking style. You know what I mean? Kind of like your grandpa or your older uncle giving you a speech on whatever, very not dynamic at all. Yeah. So what you saw with like Barack Obama, they changed the paradigm of what we expect from our politicians. This cult of personality, if you will. And Donald Trump is the same cult of personality, but just swung to the right. So, and he's a WWE Hall of Famer. I say it all the time. He taught Vince McMahon how to be Vince McMahon. He knows what he's doing. Had a conversation with my mother. She hates the man, like a lot of people, Trump derangement syndrome. But it becomes like you're hating a heel, a wrestling heel, that he's playing his role as a heel. But yeah, I mean, he definitely galvanizes his base. He knows how to speak to them. Like, again, he's a media master. Like a lot of these kind of the new age of politics is that way now. They know the metrics. They know when you sleep, when you poop, what you eat, what show you watch. They know exactly how to speak to you, if you will. But yeah, I mean, again, he's playing his role. And Joe is he's kind of the last vestige of that old kind of politician, obviously losing his mind. And I definitely, we've all talked about it the last several months. Like, Joe's never going to have a debate. The guy can't even hold the thought for 2 seconds. And I think they're already paving the way for that with Pelosi's vice presidential panel to prove if you're capable to lead. That's not for Donald Trump. That's for Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So when he gets in and then Kamala takes over, so they're laying the groundwork for it, obviously, if they win. But yeah, I mean, I was still a photographer, but I don't do it as much as I used to. So I was shooting for this company when Barack Obama came to town. It was right under the arch, and I've literally never seen that many people in my life. It was crazy. And he just played everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I forget who calls him, the long-legged Mac Daddy. He's like a used car salesman that just conned everybody. But he did it using these kind of new paradigm of politics. Hey, I hang out with Jay-Z. I'm fucking cool. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, he must be cool if he's hanging out with Jay or whatever it is. So I think Trump's playing his role. A lot of people are falling for it, even people on his side, because I don't think he has. I think he's controlled and he knows how to talk to his people, like all these politicians are. But most people are falling for the okie doke, and we do this every 48 years. No. This guy means it. He gives a shit. This dude really gives a shit. Not like all those other ones. This dude's legit. And so it just is sad for us to kind of fall for the banana in the tailpipe every 48 years. But here we are. divided as we ever could be. And I could get going back to the first question. It scares the shit out of me, really, not just election day, but the subsequent days and weeks.
Yeah, I have. It has that rabbit season, duck season feel to it.
Yeah.
You're gonna get your people all riled up. I saw that too about Pelosi talking about what she wanted to have this mental health sort of evaluation, and I was like, wow, that's ambitious for trying to do that for Trump. And then I had the same thought you had, which was, what if this isn't for Trump at all? What if it's for Biden? What if this is like she's laying the groundwork here in advance for when he gets into office, then she's going to make sure that he doesn't, then he steps down and put Kamala in with the people.
Which makes Pelosi as vice president, dude. Fucking nightmare scenario.
Oh my God. I didn't even consider that. Holy shit. This is would people burn it down for real if that happened, or are we all just so fluorided out that nobody would do anything?
I've wondered that, and I think we've gotten to a certain point, especially with everything going on these last months, where again I don't take a side, but I'm like, how in the fuck does a Chaz exist?
Right,
where people are being killed inside and raped inside. If I go take over the local Quick Trip, I'm getting swatted within 20 minutes, a half hour. But we see all these different cities and states and mayors and governors letting so much of this shit slide. And me personally, I think that kind of is by design. You go back to kind of your Bolshevik Revolution, releasing prisoners, getting rid of the cops retiring or defunding them, with that kind of the same result of chaos. But then that Latin term, ordo ab chaos, they want to bring in the order to the chaos they help create. But yeah, I mean, we're just, it's just crazy, man. The times we're in, I don't even, almost every day, I'm like, I'm pinching myself. This is so beyond bizarro world. I can't even recognize it anymore. And you got, what happened in Denver the other day in broad fucking daylight, guy gets shot in the face, all of it. It's just crazy, man. Sorry what your original question was, but I get to thinking about this shit and it's just madness.
It is. It made me think when you talked about how how Chaz, an idea like Chaz could be allowed to actually take hold, or how somebody, like the mayor of Portland saying, oh, well, these people are peacefully protesting. And you're like, I'm sorry, what show are you watching? Because everybody else is watching.
Or Nadler saying this is a myth. This violence is a myth. Or fucking Michelle Obama saying, no, this shit's been overwhelmingly and it's just like, what planet is everybody on? And it, again, we've talked about this on the show. We all share a lot of blame in this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we're not calling this out for what it is, just kind of bullshit. And a lot of that goes back to, kind of 9/11, if you will. Of course, we were all freaked out that day. I mean, those were multiple attacks, buildings collapsing. And then we're like, dude, I don't care what we got to do. We need to stop that from ever happening again. Fuck yeah, I'll take my shoes off. Yes, you can listen to my phone calls. Yes, you can possibly detain me without due process and even assassinate me. And so here we are 20 years later, putting up with more and more erosions of our shit because they've slowly, that whole boiling frog metaphor, they've had us for a long time. And now, again, have to give up all this shit to face this invisible enemy. Before it was terror. Now it's COVID. Almost doesn't even matter, 6 one way, half a dozen the other, because we're still giving up shit willingly. Like Aldous Huxley said, we're going to get to a point where we enjoy our enslavement. If you start taking away means and ways to enslave us, we're going to freak out. Like, no, give that shit back to me. I want to be enslaved, even though the best social engineering is when you don't realize it's happening. And it's just, not that I have all the answers, but to see all of this play out for so many years. My shit started when I was 16 in the Kennedy assassination. So I've always been a history guy. So you see those people who aren't history people, which is fine, but you don't see these patterns as they develop over history. You just think it's all these one-offs. Right. That's why when you go back to the Bolshevik Revolution, it's like, holy shit, this is like identical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when we had on G. Edward Griffin, it was just like the same. It was great to hear him because he was like, dude, you guys have no idea, half the people have no fucking clue how played they're being or how they're being played so bad.
Yeah, I had a layover in Mexico City on my way to an Acapulco and sat with Ed Griffin, and we talked about all kinds of, I mean, it's a great, but I felt bad for him. I talked his ear off, but he couldn't get away from me because we had to get on the same plane. So I just talked to him about, the Federal Reserve and the history of all that. And he's a great resource for this, because then you go back and you watch some of these videos that he's done, and they're like in black and white.
Oh, yeah.
He's been around he's old and has been talking about this stuff for so long. And part of that makes me, like, on the one hand, hopeful, like, okay, well, this older gentleman here, he's known it for a long, long time. Clearly there are people out there that are aware of this. But then I was like, then the flip side is, well, he has been talking about this since there was black and white television.
Yeah.
He's still getting through to people.
When we had him on,
nuts.
Even when we had David Icke on, I'm like, thanks for taking the time, because I know you're probably busy taking fucking victory laps and high-fiving yourself.
Right.
Because it's like, and I never want to do that. Like, I told you so. I just listened to our first episode of the Conspiracy Farm like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was kind of like, holy shit. I'm not Kreskin or anything, but man, we were nailing some shit.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine your G. Edward Griffins of the world, or even, your David Icks, who were just so on point. And, now it's like, you've seen the memes. Us conspiracy theorists don't seem so crazy anymore.
Right.
And again, that's not about taking victory laps, because it's frustrating, because you still see people fucking just pounding the Kool-Aid asking for seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of this comes from, like, you put something on Twitter a couple days ago that I responded to, that you were like, I'm going to watch, World War II in color again. I've watched all those World War II documentaries.
So great.
They're the greatest. But, like, I also, like, on a somewhat side topic on Twitter, got into some huge argument with some Antifa chick about something. And what I wanted to say to her was, and I think what I did say, but maybe not quite as clearly, is that, you have no idea about history, and you are walking right into a trap that if you knew anything about your history, you would understand this has been played out again and again and again. If you know about World War II, if you know about Night of the Long Knives, if you know about false flags, blaming, invasions on the Poles as a justification for invading them, you would see that all of these plays they're running are not all that there's no new offensive coordinator coming up with all these plans, they're still running the wishbone, they're still running these antiquated plays that are like over and over again. But if you understand history, or a little bit about history, it's like being a defensive coordinator going, I see that formation, I know what play they're going to run, we're going to run this defense and we'll stop it. And it's like, how did you know that this was happening? Like you said, you feel like Kreskin after, for going back and listening to episode 1. Well, the reason why you're not Kreskin, you're not Nostradamus, you just understand history, and you see, and you're good at pattern recognition, and you're seeing the same things over and over again. And frankly, these people don't have a very thick playbook. They tend to run the same things over and over again, in part because they're lazy, in part because they work, and you're not going to change your plan if it's still working. But if we all know what's coming, and we understand the history of the psychology of authority and things like this, then we look like Nostradamus going, this is going to happen. That's going to happen after this. That's going to happen after that. And everyone's like, how do you know this? It's like, I know this because if you understand history, you'll see it coming a mile away. But people are so, there's a lack of education. But even inside of that, it's like there's a lack of education specifically because they don't want you to know about history. Why do you think they're tearing down statues? Why do you think they're having safe spaces at university and getting professors fired? They don't want you to know about this, because if you know about it, they can't run it on you again. So
well, yeah. If it ain't broke, they don't. If it ain't broke, don't break it. Is what I always say. But it's like this. When we first started the Conspiracy Farm, we stated, in our first few episodes, we're defining the language now. You're not telling us we're conspiracy theorists and we're crazy. We're redefining this term. Yeah. I realized they weaponized it back, I think it was like in the 60s with the JFK thing, to demonize anybody who critically thinks. And we see that going on today, and how it's like, if you say something like, hey, this is probably going to happen. Oh, you've been watching too many X-Files, or whatever the stupid comment is, to try to blow off or delegitimize anything we might say. But yeah, I mean, I think now people are way more and more getting hip to it. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. And that's almost why we haven't, I apologize, conspiracy farmers, we haven't been doing as many shows lately. We still have more coming up, but it's like, I'm almost exhausted saying our years of episodes like, hey, here's what could be coming. Here's what might be coming. Here's what we're hypothesizing on that might be coming. Now that it's here, I'm not trying to explain that anymore to people. Study hall is over. It's time for the fucking test. And if you haven't prepared for it, things aren't probably going to go too well for you. So now we're focusing more on, like you said, all right, it's here. What are we going to do now? What are the solutions? How do we... It's so crazy. Like from the mayors to the governors to the media. I mean, the fucking media's complicity in this. I mean, it's, where are the RICO acts? We know where this money's coming from. Like, where's the DOJ on this shit? Like I said, none of us can go do half the shit these people are doing and then get let out, just to go burn some more shit down and then get let out. I mean, we know the many of companies, these guys have hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's not even dramatic. That's how they can fly all these people around. And when you watch the live feeds at the end of the night, you're like, hey, what's up, Stu? Or whatever his name is. I saw you in fucking Portland, or I saw you in Louisville. Like, everybody's making their rounds, flying, getting some measure of per diem. I've heard there's even debit cards. We just have anyway. It's just, and again, it's by design. It is by design. That's the other thing. I've been going crazy, just getting caught up in the day-to-day stuff, while not seeing the more asymmetrical war that's happening, this larger picture that, this has been, Agenda 21, the smart grid, all that shit's coming that we were talking about. David Icke was talking about. So many people have been talking about for years, have been called crazy. Now that it's happening right now, it's not for, I'm done sounding the horn of Gondor anymore. I've done sounded it. Now let's fucking, when I say fight for your own personal survival or whatever it is. And that's another thing. People who are protecting themselves, whether it's McCloskey's here in St. Louis or the dude in Milwaukee, where it's house surrounded by people. Yep. He just shows a shotgun and he gets fucking arrested.
It's nuts.
It's absolutely nuts. And that's another thing that scares the shit out of me, especially as a father. I have to make the choice of do I protect my family and possibly go to jail? And then I'm completely out of the equation and they're really vulnerable. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. These choices we're having to make, do I protect my family, possibly go to jail? Do I not? And then let them overrun my house. I mean, it's the other thing, the inversion of reality we're seeing. People defending their homes are now the bad guys.
Yeah. It's weird. It seems to me that these governors have been promised something in advance from the Biden camp, the Democratic governors. And I'm like you. I'm not on the red team. I'm not on the blue team. I don't like either of them. I understand that they're set up to fight each other, and you and I are in the stands, throwing rocks at them. But it looks like it's undeniable that the states that have the Democratic governors are totally mismanaged. And I'm from California. I live in Denver now, but I'm from California. So I was there forever. I know what it was. I know what it is now. It's not the same. California is the 6th largest economy in the world. If it was its own country, it would be number 6. I mean, it's that important. And yet we've always had wildfires, but not like this, which I think has to do with the chemtrail spraying, but whatever. We've got fires. We've got the homeless population. It is, and I went to USC, which is in South Central Los Angeles. You would see the vans come by and drop the mentally ill people off, open the back and pull them out and leave them on the street corner and drive off from the mental hospitals that were just dumping them near Skid Row. We always knew that there was a problem with that. We didn't know that it was a problem to the point where that the homeless population was going to be multiplied by 20 times what it was before. So that's clearly an issue. We've got San Francisco turned into, people shitting on the streets, needles everywhere. You can't do anything about that or you go to jail. Everything has been so mismanaged that I get to the point where I feel like, if you were trying to mismanage it on purpose, you couldn't have even done this good of a job. So is there some incentive? Are they incentivizing these governors with secretary level positions that will be granted to them if Biden wins? Or have they been promised something? Because it seems to me like they're doing illogical things in Chicago and in Minneapolis and in, all along the West Coast. They're making irrational decisions, like allowing Chaz to, like you said, that would never, ever happen. If you went to the grocery store, tried to commandeer it, the SWAT team would be there and they would fill you full of holes. And maybe rightfully so, but this has been allowed to happen, and everyone intentionally looking the other way, going, nothing to see here.
Or not even acknowledging it, saying it's going to be a summer of peace. No, this is a myth, and violence is a myth. Joe Biden, Antifa is a fucking idea. They got websites; they've been around forever.
Right.
That's for me. That's also just a heavy indicator that it's a fix, right? None of those guys are that stupid. Don't believe me. Don't believe your lying eyes. Rather, believe me. We're seeing shit burn for months and months and months, but no, it's just a myth. I mean, like you said, they could be promised positions, or they could just be flat out getting fucking cash payments, man. I mean, I'd love to see the General Accounting Office, records of what happened to this 4 or 5, 6, 7 trillion that went out in that first stimulus or whatever. Because I think some of that went to grease some fucking skids in some of these states. And again, man, if they can take down the Gambino family or whatever and do that, flow chart of who's what, they know where this money's coming from. The NSA, they can track these fucking phone calls. They know who's doing what. And, it's just, and that's what's always frustrating to me, even before this happened, is like, I liken the madness we've seen over the several years, like a zombie movie. You finally get away from the zombies. You're running. Oh my God, a fucking police station. Cool. You walk in the door, you tap on the policeman's shoulder, he turns around, he's a fucking zombie too. So there's like nowhere to go. And that's almost where we're at now. You can't even, I do implore people, like the Agenda 21, it's an international plan that's implemented locally. So get to know your sheriff, get to know your local police department, because that's who you want to have your back. Here in St. Louis, man, the special prosecutor, this Gardner, and even all over the country, these people who are not charging people, who are letting people go, who are just blatantly committing crime. You need to know who's on your side, because, like I said, this ain't going away anytime soon.
Let's talk about that Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, because it seems like I think most people listening to this have at least basic knowledge of it. But to recap, it's put together by the United Nations. It's a push to what the United Nations, of course, is a terrorist organization masquerading as some sort of humanitarian institution.
Clinton Global Foundation-ish.
They are. If you look up globalists, it is basically the United Nations. So they've got this idea they're going to help everybody by packing them into cities and making them smart cities, which of course we know everything that they say, you basically should invert it. Where it seemed to me, so Agenda 21 was the plan early on, which was, this is the plan for the 21st century, and it'll kind of kick in the year 2000. Well, they moved the goalposts and made it Agenda 2030 because they realized they needed 3 extra decades to make this stuff happen. Now we're at 2020, and it seems like they've moved the goalposts in about 5 years to 2025, because it seems like they're ahead of schedule. To best of your ability, explain the plan of Agenda 2030. What do these fucking maniacs have up their sleeve for us?
Well, I mean, it just, we had on Rosa Quarry, and she could obviously explain it better than I can, so check that episode out. But I mean, it's the implementation of a technocracy. Essentially, a eugenics-based technocracy where we move away from a resource-based economy to an energy-based economy, with China kind of being the model, if not the beta test. The Internet of Things, the smart grid, like you mentioned, everything completely monitored. Your consumption, how many credits does it take for Charlie to be Charlie in a given day? No more money, no more anonymous transactions. And, like you said, shoveling everybody into urban areas. If you've seen Demolition Man or Judge Dredd, I mean, that's kind of the visual I'm thinking when I talk about this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's just a completely monitored digital world where, again, it's almost like the Matrix. We're just ones and zeros, fuel for the machine, if you will. And, we get certain credits to operate in this system. The digital wallet, which is coming, is not only just going to be one way. It's, they can put money in, take money out. The social credit system, we're already seeing it. Hey, if you don't have your mask on, you can't come into this school. You can't go to this baseball game. Soon it'll be the vaccines. And then soon it'll be, I saw a video of a guy in China jaywalking gets a text after he crosses the street. We just saw you jaywalk through facial recognition, all this shit. You've been deducted XYZ. If you fall below a certain level, you can't use public transportation. You can't fly. You can't go to this area. So, I mean, that's kind of what it is. Everything being monitored, logged, tracked. And again, when you start talking about the soft benevolent language they use often covers their nefarious agenda, no pun intended, whether it's, sustainable development, the new normal. It's almost like Black Lives Matter. Of course, we all think Black Lives Matter, but BLM has nothing to do with that sentiment. It's a hidden agenda, if you will, utilizing this kind of soft language. So, I mean, that's essentially, again, check that episode out with Rosa. She's been talking about this forever. But again, the eugenicists start talking about eugenics and all of that years ago, but that didn't play very well in the technocracy. It just didn't play very well. So they morphed it into things like climate change. Yeah. While still saying, oh, the root of it is carbon. Wow, who expels carbon? Oh, people. So they just hate people. And so now with COVID, they've morphed the language into still fulfilling their same agenda.
Yeah, it's interesting about the social credit system too, because you talk about China. China rolled that out already in Shenzhen, and it's beyond concerning, because that it's like the test rollout there, and that it'll be exported. Yeah. It's already being exported. In fact, China's doing something interesting where they're financing countries. Like Ecuador was one of the first ones that they said, we'll help you set up this surveillance grid, this smart concept with the facial recognitions and employ your social credit system framework. But we know that that's expensive. We know that you're Ecuador. You don't don't have a ton of money laying around. So we'll finance it. But we'll put it in for you, and then we'll finance it, and then you can just kind of pay us back. And that concept immediately takes me back to Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John
I was
Perkins,
just going to say,
the book that woke me up to this, because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, because it's mentioning Ecuador specifically. And two, it's this, oh, you don't have the money? Don't worry. We'll put it in. We'll take care of it. You can make payments. Everything will be fine. We'll work it all out. And then it doesn't work out. And then they've got you. And then they say, well, you didn't pay us. And so we're going to have to extract something else from you. We're going to have to extract. Yes. Oh, it's China's putting this in. Well, you're going to have to allow us to put a Chinese port there. Oh, okay. Or you're going to agree to sell us your gas at a reasonable price or something like that. So,
well, and I'm glad you brought up the China aspect of it, because, the fucking 10-ton elephant in the room that not a lot of people talk about is the One Belt, One Road agenda. Right. And, people just need to look that up, because that's a whole new game-changing thing. But that's what they've been using for their maritime route of that. They call the String of Pearls. And Sri Lanka is a perfect example. They basically gave them money. Sri Lanka couldn't pay it back. Like, don't sweat it. We're just going to build a port here. Right. Just happens to be one of the key strategic parts of our Belt and Road. So, I mean, again, and that's something people, I think, need to be super, super aware of, because, this fourth industrial revolution, the Belt and Road, this has a lot to do with, I wouldn't say they're moving away from America so much, because, I mean, I just think we all just need to keep our eye on this Belt and Road stuff, because I think a lot of these terrorist activities, whether it's the Pakistan Indian area, whether it's the area of the former Soviet republics in Western China, and the the Uyghurs, where those concentration camps are, these are all areas that are going to involve the Belt and Road. This stuff's going on in Armenia and Azerbaijan right now. This is right at where the Belt and Road will go into Turkey and into Europe. So it's no accident that these things are happening right now. And again, it's the Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. I mean, nothing is ever as it seems on paper. Whether it's the war on terror, the war on drugs, COVID, I mean, there's always something else that they're masking when they do this shit.
Yeah, the Belt and Road is interesting, because I put in my Octopus book that one of the things that Africa has big problems with the United States for is the United States comes in and builds military bases and drone bombs their people, but China comes in and builds hospitals. And so they build hospitals for sick Africans instead of graveyards for dead Africans, like the way the United States does. And they've used this as a way to sort of get the African countries on board, soften them up a little bit, maybe as a pretext for extracting resources like
imagine that
the American Empire does,
Yeah.
And it's been fascinating to see that relationship. But China's approached it from a much different standpoint. They treat the Africans as partners, at least initially and right now. That's the sales pitch, at least. We're your partners. We're going to build this infrastructure programs. We're going to put in water treatment facilities and roads and cargo, and ports and all these things to help bring you in. It's always this nice look. And of course, that the people at the top are getting taken care of. They've got some guy that makes the decision on this in Kenya somewhere probably has a offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands that's filled with $1 billion from all this. I mean, there's the money is they've got all the money in the world to make this stuff happen. So it's interesting. Jeff Berwick and I have a new book coming out, and part of it in there's a chapter where we talk about this concept, this Greek concept called the Thucydides trap, which is the rise of one superpower challenges the existing superpower that exists, and 3 out of 4 times they go to war against each other. At least in the history of empires, 12 out of the last 16 empires that have had these sort of similar situations have gone to war. And we see that with American empire as the existing one, the rise of China seen as a threat, and then what we're seeing in the United States through the media is the demonization of China. And there's plenty of blame to go around for China, for sure. But there's also this manufactured paranoia of China. Look at China. They're building out into the South China Sea. They're building these islands and everything. It's like, well, yeah, because they're off the coast of China. If they were building them in Catalina Island off the coast of Los Angeles, I think we'd have a legitimate reason to be mad. But it's like, we're going to go start a war because it just, to me, it just seems like they are looking for excuses. They're trying to bait China into some war because they feel that their American empire is threatened by the Chinese. The rise of the Chinese empire, the Belt and Road Initiative is certainly something that a lot of these other countries are like, we could get on board with this. We know there's going to be empires, but if you're the empire that builds trade routes, we like you a lot better than the other empire that builds military bases and drone facilities that then kill all of our civilians. So China's incentivizing
and like you said too, throughout history, we do get caught up in that Pepsi versus Coke and kind of argue too much about that, or Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, like the work part of it, if you will. But when you go back in history, all of these conflicts are always funded up top by, we call them global bankers now, but it's like they're always funding both sides and playing each side off against each other. And I think that's still very much so going on in China with all of this. And, with the emergence of this Belt and Road, my history teacher in freaking community college, before I went to real college, told me, God, I'm old, so this was a long time ago, told me about the Spratly Islands. And he's like, listen, you're going to hear about the Spratly Islands here in the next 20 years. I had no idea. He's like, there's more oil in the Spratly Islands than almost anywhere on Earth. So you have the emergence of Belt and Road, plus, fighting over the South China Sea, which, it's so funny because, like you said, that's their backyard. Right. But like any other time, and I love this country. I'm just saying, we've done some shady foreign policy shit. It's not okay when they do it, but when we do it, it's right as fucking rain. But I think they do see the emergence of this tiger, if you will, and they got to do something, false flag or something to get in there, like you said, to demonize China. I mean, the Wuhan virus, whatever you want to call it, that's a big step in demonizing the Chinese. But it's something that you talk about one of the largest economies. I think it's maybe the third in the world. It's called ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's basically Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. It's like 11 different countries down there that comprise this thing called ASEAN. And it's everyone's, both China and America, are really vying for their attention right now because they're really at the fulcrum down there in Southeast Asia. You got South China Sea up here, and then they're obviously trying to go over here, Sri Lanka, moving to Kenya in the Indian Ocean and stuff. But right there in the middle is this all these conglomeration of countries. So definitely people look up that stuff too, man. ASEAN, and you see more and more of, like, again, us trying to curry favor with these countries and the trade war that's going on right now. And I don't mean to go off too much, but this whole thing with Huawei, this are basically excluding any countries who utilize any Huawei products. That's their Apple of sorts. Their microprocessing company is Huawei. That's in all their computers, all their laptops, all their phones. So as a part of this asymmetrical trade war, this economic war, we've basically shut down nobody's going to be able to do business with them. So as a counter to that, we've started getting in bed with this company called TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which they just moved a big facility over to Phoenix, which is going to be the new microprocessing processor or whatever for. It's just there's a lot to it, man. But there's just the economic war and the asymmetrical war is absolutely crazy, and we just don't hear a lot about it because mainstream media is obviously not there to inform you. So check out the Belt and Road, ladies and gentlemen. Check out ASEAN, the String of Pearls, and just see how that plays. When you start hearing stuff in the news of these conflicts, like, all right, point, where's that at? Like, oh, shit, that's right along this route. What's going on in Armenia and Azerbaijan? Oh, shit, that's right along this route. So the grand chessboard is continued to be played.
You know what I just realized is that if you go to, there's a website called Chartable that someone turned me on to, and it ranks like where podcasts are, and it shows like where your ranking is by country. My show is new, and for whatever reason, it's got the right trajectory. It shows that it's gone to number 1 in 3 places. And I just put the pieces together when you mentioned this. I'm number 1 in Malaysia, Pakistan, and Mauritius. It's all along the Belt and Road. I think that I might be there's a conspiracy going on here. It might be all these people building the Belt and Road that are listening or watching this show. It's fascinating, but absolutely.
But again, what it's one of those things like what can be done. Like my brother, you commented, he always says, man, you know all this stuff, but like what can be done about it?
Right.
And it is a daunting thing for sure. You know what I mean? It's very, very daunting. But again, like anything in life, you can't change shit unless you at least recognize there's a problem. Right. And if you recognize a problem and you default on the whole, like, well, you can't fight City Hall. They're going to do what they're going to do. Well, I mean, you've already just taken it in the ass and you've almost checked out. You waved the white flag. And so you really have no intention of engaging, not even just a fight, but like an information war to get yourself hip to it. Years ago, I've stored food forever. I was crazy when I was storing food and, all this stuff. But now it's just like, holy shit. Yeah. It's one of those insurance policies. You want to have it, not need it, not have it. But yeah.
Yep.
We live in a crazy world, Charlie.
People can, I'll tell you what, though, you're kind of joking about that on Facebook about, like, well, what are you going to just tell people to grab their ankles? And
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was my brother. That was my brother.
Yeah, it was funny. There are some things we can do. I mean, look, we're probably not going to be able to change the world, but collectively we maybe can. Individually, though, there are some easy steps. I'm not licensed to give financial advice. I'm licensed to give real estate advice, but not financial advice. But my God, man, if you're not buying some physical gold and physical silver and maybe taking some cash out of the bank, that might be a good start. This new book that's coming out, we talk about some of the technical aspects of banking, because Berwick is way into banking and he knows a lot about central banks and traditional banks even. When you take your money and you put it in your bank account, like you take a check or you get your payroll check and you put it in the bank account, that money becomes the property of the bank. You're an unsecured creditor of that money. People think, well, it's my bank account. I'll go in and get my money out. Oh no. If the shit goes down and your bank closes, the FDIC can make you whole up to $250,000. But they only have enough money to cover like less than 2% of all the deposits on hand. If we have a systemic problem, which we very well may, and you go to your bank to try and get your money out, the bank will inform you that it is in fact their money and you are in line behind several people. Yeah. They can take that money and do whatever they want with it. And you can riot and picket and do all that stuff, but they'll just say, read the contract, sue us if you'd like, but it's our money. So one of those things for, I think, people to recognize and realize if you want to plan ahead is that the money that you put in the bank becomes their money, not your money. So maybe if you want to make sure you have some of it, take some of it out in cash. And lately, this has been weird. I've had it where I've taken money out and they've said, what is this cash for? I said, for none of your business is what it's for. Like, oh, well, right. we just have to ask. I'm like, why? Why do you have to? You don't have to ask for what? I mean, so there are some things that we can do to plan ahead. You can start a Chaz garden. If you have extra empty cardboard pizza boxes and you want to spread them out or in your backyard and throw dirt on them, you can start a Chaz garden.
Well, and again, with the understanding of what Agenda 21 is all about and how they implement it, I mean, of course, you're not going to change the globalist system by yourself or almost even collectively necessarily because it's so huge. It's trying to eat a whale with one bite. This is an international plan implemented locally, though. So you do have power locally to your city council, your mayors, again, your governors. I mean, that's really, I mean, the only way any of this can go down is if we go along with it.
Right.
And for whatever reason, the use of fear has always been effective. But if we just, even at the local level, just start saying no, what are they going to do? Arrest everybody?
Right.
I mean, the only way they can do this is if people, I'm not going to get into the mass thing, but that's kind of a part of it. This group think, this notion of, I mean, people die every day. What are we going to do? Live in a riskless society? When you hop in your car and go to the store, you could be one of 3,000 people who die every day from your car accident or whatever.
Right.
But it's like, again, it's the inverse of reality. I'm doing all of this and we're shutting everything the fuck down for something literally almost 100% people survive. Yeah. Yes, we've lost some people, not near 200 fucking thousand. We don't even need to get into how they've inflated those numbers. But I mean, we've just kind of abdicated our common sense. We're always raised to no, respect your elders, respect authority. And I get that. But what happens when what they're telling us is completely counterintuitive to what we know is, fuck. People get flu shots all the time. People still die from flu, tuberculosis, pneumonia, heart attacks, alcohol, whatever. I mean, it's I'm saying they've mind fucked us to think, no, we gotta live our life with completely no risk involved, which is not a life I'm trying to live. But it's like, how do we not just say fuck off? When we know the survivability rate and the mortality rate, and it's sad because we've seen it. People have had to make the choice of do I follow this bullshit order and potentially go broke, lose my business like millions have, or do I go to fucking work and live my life and try to mitigate my chances of getting this? If you want to have mass war or whatever, but I mean, just live your fucking life. And if you do get it, my 70-year-old uncle got it, had a temperature for a few hours. President Trump just had the fucking weekend virus, apparently. Yeah. And he's in that demographic of people who should have died. I mean, I granted, these things are affecting people differently, and not everybody has the money to do the whatever that was therapy Trump did. But it's just crazy to see what we've done to the planet. I mean, not only, millions of people out of work, millions of businesses closed, suicide through the fucking roofs because they've, the psychological aspect of this, all for something that 99.7 or whatever people survive.
Yeah. And the president is 74 years old, has the most stressful job in the world, drinks Diet Cokes like crazy, and eats McDonald's. And he made it through after a couple of days. It's like, let's prioritize this. I mean, if the Corona scare, and you mentioned this earlier about the terrorism, the war on terror, always these invisible enemies, and they get a disproportionate amount of airtime on the nightly news as compared to the death rate from it. Terrorism inside the United States is Americans inside the United States dying from terrorism is on par statistically with getting killed by a falling vending machine. It's on just one particular day. There's 7 times more people getting killed by vending machines falling on them than there are people in the United States dying from terrorism. Yet, if you go by the news coverage, there's terrorists everywhere. We got to get them there before they get us here. If you go with the Corona situation, if this was the bubonic plague and we were going to have, or the Black Plague, and everyone was going to be stacking bodies on sidewalks, you don't need a public relations arm to tell you about the virus. You don't need to go get celebrities to tell you to wear masks. You don't need this constant PR push. It would be undeniable and in your face, and you would be aware of it. And I'm glad that that's not happening, by the way. I'm glad that we don't have bodies stacking up. I'm glad this is much less than what they said it is. But if people are still unable to comprehend that this is more of a political situation than a medical situation, then I really don't know what to tell them. I mean, I'm conflicted in this, and I'm sure you probably are too. It's where, and the conflict is, how much of my energy do I focus on trying to shake people awake? And how much of my energy do I focus on people that are actually willing to receive this sort of information? Because not everybody is ready at this point. But frankly, if you're not awake after what we've been going through, you may never be awake.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's kind of my joke about it. Study hall's over. If you're not ready for the test, I mean, we're not going to save everybody.
Yeah.
So this notion of, like you said, how much energy do I spend, trying to quote unquote wake people up anymore? I mean, it's very limited. I just don't. It's as obvious as the day is long. So it's like, and then now it's so I've said this many times on the show, even before all this happened. People's ignorance, quote unquote ignorance, which just means uninformed, their lack of information, can become dangerous. And that's I think what we're seeing now. We're seeing people, whatever. I've seen people take pictures of other people who don't have their mask on, and there's a number you can send that to, or snitch lines where their business is open. Oh, fuck, send it in. And my guy out in New Mexico knew somebody opened his gym. They find him. He was like $60,000 or some shit like that. Or, Frank Trombetti and the guys who own the Attila's gym, we had them on. It's, they took their business license. They jailed them. Like,
Were those guys in New Jersey?
Yeah. Frank had to miss. I started crying on the show, dude. Frank had to miss his mom's funeral because if he went to the funeral, he would have to quarantine. He wouldn't be able to fight to keep his gym open. I mean, that's a horrible fucking decision to have to make. And we're seeing that a lot. A friend of mine, her mom just suddenly passed away, I think in Iowa, and she can't go see her. That's happening all over. People can't go to visitations or wakes or visit people, and they're dying by themselves because of this shit. It's just like,
oh, you can though if you're on Capitol Hill. They'll have 4 funerals for you, and everybody's invited, and they'll let you lay in state and do all that nonsense. But God forbid you actually have, you're just a normal person. Then they put, but that is like one of the last things that happens in a healthy society. That's one of the last things that happens before society just erupts and says, we're done with this. And they start dragging governors and city council people and all these people, and they start taking them to the gallows. That's how it was all done in the olden days.
Yeah. That's what I've always wondered, and I'm not talking shit about patriots, quote unquote patriots, the guys who super Second Amendment, not knocking it, training in the woods. Hey, if these fuckers come take my shit from my cold dead hand, we're going to rise up. And me personally, I'm a history guy. What the fuck are you waiting for? They've been using the Constitution for toilet paper for decades.
Yeah.
Gulf of Tonkin. They fucking lied. That never happened. But almost 60,000 Americans fucking died. Weapons of mass destruction, 9/11. Go into it. And now we're at the precipice of like, what's the line for you guys? What's the fucking line? I'm not saying go start violence and drag people out, but what's the line for everyone? Even just non-militia patriot type people. How long are you going to be allowed yourself to get clowned like fucking Krusty, lied to your face? Hear these politicians talk about 2 sides out of their mouth. No, you don't need the fucking mask. No, you desperately need them. I mean, how long are we going to do this? Because again, the only way this shit can fly and ride is if we participate in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been seeing that. We've been seeing a lot of people, I think at our core, most people are decent, good people. They want to do what's right. They're being told by authority, this is what you need to do the right thing. So they're like, okay, I'll do the right thing. Stay in my house for 2 weeks so that I don't spread the disease and overwhelm the hospitals. I'm not sure about the science behind all that, but if you say it's going to help, I'm a good person. I'm willing to help. It's not that big of an inconvenience for me, so I'm going to do it. And so that's how they get the majority of people, real nice, go along to get along type of people. But when that story is now, when we're now 6 months into this, then I fail to see why everybody is being so polite about this anymore.
Yes.
And I'm like you. I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for anything like that. I am calling for civil disobedience. I am calling for do not comply with unjust orders and laws. I am also reminding people that we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. So, maybe these maniacs in Washington, D.C., they think they've got the upper hand now. But if they saw everybody rise up, it reminds me of this old, it reminds me of the story that Chris Hedges wrote about in one of his books, talking about the scene inside of the Oval Office when Nixon was president, and he was there with Henry Kissinger, and there were huge riots. I think it was after the Ohio, the Kent State shooting, and he had put buses end to end circling the White House so that the protesters couldn't get in, and the scene was that Nixon and Kissinger standing there next to each other, looking out the window, and Henry's wringing his hands, going, Nixon is wringing his hands going, Henry, they're going to come in and get us. They're going to get us, Henry. And Hedges says, that's where you want them. You want politicians at all times to be in that position where they fear the people, where they have in the back of their mind, this could get bad for me if we continue down this path. And I feel like in the last 25 years, the politicians have no fear of repercussions. There's no laws that put that nobody is held accountable. Every now and then you get somebody that, you get a guy that does something stupid and he gets thrown out of government, but then he takes a, consulting job with Lockheed Martin and,
right.
But we've been seeing over the last quarter century, no ramifications for any of these politicians feeling any sort of pressure by the people, even to the point where in 2013, they legalized insider trading in Congress, which most people were like, when the Corona situation happened and they heard all about all these senators that sold their stock in advance and everything, like, oh my God, we got to go get them. You're not going to go get anybody. They legalized that. You did nothing. That was 7 years ago.
And again, the social engineers, if you will, going back to even like Edward Bernays, the founder of like modern public relations and marketing, from a psychological standpoint, he knows how human beings work. And, the new Social Dilemma show, I don't know if you've seen that, the new documentary.
I want to, but I've heard a lot about it.
Well, and again, they've taken basic understanding of human psychology and then kind of digitized it through our consuming digitally. So they know our algorithm. They know who we are psychologically anyway, but then you throw on tracking all of our habits and everything. They know exactly, like I was saying earlier, they know exactly who we are. So they've almost MK Ultra the masses. Because it's so, like you said, they don't use different technologies or different because they know it works. And that has led to basically this mass Stockholm syndrome that we've all seemed to have had. Yeah, I'm going to wear the mask. I know these fuckers have lied to me up and down every which way to Sunday, but this time they're telling the truth.
Right.
And, and part of that, again, is that's why it's so, if you test more people, you're going to have more positive tests. And if that's your litmus test, fine, that's your litmus test. For me, it's who's being hospitalized, who's dying. Those numbers have fucking plummeted, but yet we still act like this is Ebola and people are bleeding out of their fucking ears.
Right.
I mean, that's again part of the frustration. It's like, why can't we just use common sense? Yeah, I know I know a lot of people who've gotten it and who've been fine. I know people have died from it, but let's not, I know it sounds corny and cliche now, but let's not let the cure be worse than the fucking disease. And that's where we're at now. Yeah. I mean, when you start seeing the domestic violence and suicides and just the huge impact all of this has had on society for something that almost 100% of people survive, it just freaks me out, dude. And that's, again, part of the huge frustration, whether it's anything, whether it's JFK, RFK, Pearl Harbor, any of this shit. It's like, how can you guys not see this? It seems just so it is. And it's just like, it almost goes back to that demonization of being a conspiracy theorist or contrarian thinker. There's almost a certain unconscious people's fear. I don't want to be one of those guys. I want to be somebody who's fucking going right along with the plan. I mean, I know we call them sheep and all that other shit, but that's almost true to some degree.
Yeah, there's a downside to lifting your head up and talking, being outspoken about certain things. If you do it in some ways, you're inspirational. If you do it in other ways, you're looked at as a threat or part of the problem. Most people don't want to be considered a conspiracy theorist because the association that they have is that those people are ridiculed and mocked and shunned by society and everyone's laughing at them. Well, that's not exactly what's really happening, because what's actually happening is that these people that are conspiracy theorists aren't theorizing anymore. They're analyzing. Right. We're past the theory part.
And people are so, I think there's a certain fear component, especially the older you get, the more you almost have to demonize conspiracy theorists. Because if you legitimize them and then that reflects on you, like, oh, I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
That belies the larger question. Oh, what else am I wrong about?
Yes.
And then, like I said, as you get older, it belies even a larger question of like, fuck, everything I've been told is a lie. Now what do I do? Now it puts the onus on them for being so fucking ignorant all this time. Then it's like, what do I do now? What do I feel like? Everything's just been a huge lie. I've been clowning these people who said 9/11 was an inside job. Come to find out, I read the what was it for the American Century
Project for New Americans,
or any of these things, any of these documents, any of these white papers that have, or even Event 201.
Yeah,
that was like 3 months before it happened, and then Bill Gates comes out like, we never knew this could possibly fucking happen. I mean, it's like to your face they lie. But again, that goes back to people's ignorance. When I mean that, just being uninformed.
Right.
And we've said it many times. I heard somebody even allude to it the other day. Most people just don't have the fucking time to do this shit. I mean, I realized listening to like Yuri Bezmenov and Gilbert Griffin and a guy named Manning fucking Johnson, black dude, listen to Manning Johnson's closing farewell address, dude. Especially black folks out there who are falling for this BLM bullshit. But I mean, when you come to find out how deep this rabbit hole goes, you're like, I've been in it 30 years since the Kennedy, when I started reading it, not that I was there for the Kennedy thing, but yeah, most people just watch the news, Rachel Maddow, whatever, even Fox, 30 minutes, watch an hour show. Now I get what's going on. I call it kind of the fast food news. Mm-hmm. They eat garbage at McDonald's, but their belly is satiated for a minute. No micronutrients, no real quality of the food, but they ate something. Yep. And that's kind of like the fast food news. People, no, I watch that shit all the time. Okay, well then you really have no fucking clue if that's, what you're consuming and getting your information from. So yeah, man.
Empty calories, empty news calories.
Empty news calories, yeah.
Yeah. It's
fed.
It's like we it's you are what you eat. You are also the information that you consume. It's not trying to say that you and I are perfect. We have all the information. We just have we're just reading different books. We're listening to different people. We might not have it all right. We know we don't have it all right, but we've been doing this for a while that we can we're starting to see repeats, we're starting to see false flags that kind of mimic one another. We're starting to see public statements and the way the media phrases certain things, terminology that you're like, oh, that sounds a whole lot like this other thing.
And with that understanding, with that acknowledgement, the understanding that they now legally can propagandize us.
Yep.
That's in the latest, was one of the latest NDAAs, in addition to indefinite detention and assassinating you and all that other shit. Yeah. They've been doing it forever, but now they can legally propaganda us.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't scare the shit out of you, thinking about the last 6 months, like.
Right. You lay out this case. I mean, like we in the alternative media lay out this case, and we think it's a pretty good case. We can show you evidence. We're not just speculating. We're not just huffing paint and coming up with theories or anything. Like there's history. We can look at what has happened in the past and see where it's going. We know that the media has legally been, or that the government is legally allowed to lie to us through the Smith Modernization Act of 2012, which was stuffed into the 2013 NDAA. That authorized that. So now it's legal. We know that they wouldn't make it legal if they didn't intend to use it. They've got indefinite detention legal. They intend to use that. They can access your phone records. They have access to that. I mean, all these things that they've legalized. I want to sometimes shake people because it's like, listen, man, they legalized it because they intend to use it. You don't take that extraordinary and time-consuming and politically potentially, troubling step of making something like that legal unless you plan to use it. So now we're in 2020. We've been hearing about death statistics from COVID. We've been hearing about Biden's how he's polling. We've been hearing about China building up. We've been hearing about Russia interfering in our election, and all of these things are out there as if they're just known facts and truths. But the vast majority of people have never even considered the possibility that all of these things are lies. And I think it's important for people to, shake themselves and say, it not only is it possible that they're lies, but the government has legalized the ability to lie. And therefore, if they have done that, A plus B equals C. C is our information that we're getting on our mainstream news is filled with lies. The only question is, what's the percentage? And since they don't have to label it, how would we ever know? So,
well, and with our ADD kind of thought process, like again, the fast food news, I wasn't even aware of, and I was just blown away listening to Yuri Bezmenov talk about ideological subversion. Whereas just one, I think there's 4 parts, and just one takes, he said, like 10 to 15 years to demoralize a society. Like, that's just, people don't even think in those terms. And it's like 10 to 15 years. I would have been way hip to that if it took that long, but you're not. You're not. And it's just like, when you look at it from that standpoint of, I think our normal lives. Hey, Charlie, what do you do? I got such and such on tomorrow, and then I got to take my kids to such and such. We just think in those small incremental things. Right. These are eugenicists, these, whatever you want to call them, social engineers. These guys think in generations, with Creature from Jekyll Island, they knew their end game with creating the Federal Reserve. Then, we're still seeing it play out, but it's like you said, none of this is necessarily by accident. And it takes way longer to implement these plans than people realize. Like, going back to Agenda 21, or even the technocracy, the Rockefellers and stuff talking about eugenics in the 30s and 40s. They kind of knew where they were going with things, and it's just taken a really long time. Yeah.
What do you guys have coming up in the near future on the farm?
It's been kind of, like I said, I part of the reason I haven't been doing it is because, like I was saying, the nature, I'm tired. I'm done yelling, or sounding the horn of Gondor. But I work a lot. And so for me, it's more quality over quantity. I take a lot of time to book guests, research the guests. So I just don't want to pump out fluff. Yeah. So for me, a couple reasons, but one of the main reasons, because I work so damn much, and I just don't have necessarily the time. Yeah. My job kind of situation's changing a little bit. But hopefully we'll have a little bit more time. But we have a couple things lined up, nothing definitive quite yet. But like I said, you've been on the show. Yep. I try to book as solid guests as possible. I actually would love to get you back on soon. We had you and several others on when this really kicked off, and we were just pumping out. And I definitely want to get you on. And a lot of those guests we did have on when this first kicked off to do the whole 6 month later, 8 month later debrief, because right. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not about being right, but just see how it's affecting everybody. And just kind of thinking what's possibly next. Nothing good. I mean, I'm seeing more places shut down, and of course, coupled on that, you got the elections. So yeah, I know. Just trying to stay the course, man.
I know what I want to ask you. I want to ask you about your MMA commentary career. Oh
yes, man.
Yes,
it's been kicking off. So I've been commentating a little locally here, professional wrestling, for a while. What was it? Last November. We teamed up with this company called Caged Aggression MMA, a local promotion, killer production level, UFC veterans, LFA veterans, Bellator veterans. So we kicked off our first pay-per-view. Our pay-per-view company that does the streaming and the pay-per-view side teamed up with the promotion to hit some bumps in the road. But like anything else, it's not a failure or a mistake. It's an opportunity to learn. So we just had another one last September, was absolutely killer. 2-night event. We got another one coming up this weekend, a 2-night event. If you guys are interested in sitting around doing nothing, cagedaggression.tv. I'll be calling Friday night with former lightweight champion Jens Pulver, Little Evil Pulver. And the second night, I'll be calling it with obviously Pat Miletich. But it's so super cool. I mean, I've always been a fight fan, combat sports fan. And I told Pat, and I'm like, now I'm getting paid to do what I would normally do on fight night, which is like yell at the, right. Wicked right, fucking left, he's out, But yeah, he even had an awesome opportunity this summer to call Pat's fight. His last fight, he fought Michael second to none, former super middleweight champion. That was fucking surreal. So many of these things I've gotten myself into, interviewing people like yourself, with our other show, which we will be kicking back up. It's called Everything Combat. Our company is called Everything Combat. We're going to start streaming Everything Combat, from fighting, axe throwing, battle bots. But yeah, that was a really, really cool opportunity. And like I said, through Everything Combat, we've interviewed George Foreman, Dan Gable. I'm a big professional wrestling fan. Eric Bischoff. Just several people that I just like. I'm talking to George Foreman right fucking now. That's so I'm crazy. Just really stoked, man. I'm just really stoked. I guess posted the other. I'm living my dream. More work to do, obviously, but I'm really pinching myself and just thankful for these opportunities that I've been allowed to be a part of.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Hey, everybody, that's Jeffery Wilson. He is one half of the Conspiracy Farm. Check it out if you can.
ConspiracyFarm.com.
Yep. And where else can people find you? Are you fighting with morons on Twitter like I am?
I don't do that. Pat loves to do that shit, dude.
Pat's the best at it.
Oh my God. Like he will have like a chapter book going with somebody. And I don't say this from like an arrogant standpoint at all. Cause I'm a Socrates guy. All I know is I know nothing. I don't have the fucking energy to argue with people on Facebook. Whose mind are you fucking changing with a Facebook post? And again, it goes back to that kind of frustration. Like, you fucking idiot. It's another thing. It's not to get too, whatever the word is. I don't have so much. I have my opinion, but my opinion doesn't have me. I think way too many people have this need to be right. And I have my own thoughts on why that is, some ego shit going on. But I just don't. And some people do it just to troll, and I don't even have that energy to do that shit. Like, but I know people do, and it's kind of, I wouldn't say sad. It's just to see people go at it so hard, and always it ends up as like, you're a fucking idiot. You don't kill yourself. It's like, wow, yeah. Oh God. That's with Pat being a Mason, you can only imagine the shit we hear. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat is not eating children. He's not doing sacrifices, whatever the fuck the History Channel bullshit shows on Freemasonry make you think. But any group, I'm sure there's some fucktards in there, but Pat Miletich is one of the fucking most decent, wholesome, beautiful human beings I've ever met. Yeah. And it's just funny to hear people, talk about real shit they really don't know just because they've been, I don't know, whatever the word is, misinformed on a certain group.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. I find myself every now and then getting dragged into it, but I try to stay, but I try to just have some fun with it. But from time to time, I just,
well, and I'm an intention guy too. If your intent is to just like, let me fuck with these people. But if it's like, I have to change your mind, you have to see my way of thinking. And it just is so, it's Facebook, man. I mean, it's not. And most times people are pretty set in their ways. So unless, that's why I think The Matrix was a documentary. You know what I mean? A lot of people are red pilled and a lot of people took that blue pill and are absolutely convinced that this world that they're seeing is the real world. And it's just not.
Yeah, it's just
nothing is what it seems.
No, it's not. But I'll tell you what it seems is that the Conspiracy Farm is available. Check it out and subscribe and download and do all that stuff and harass Jeffery Wilson on Facebook because he loves it. Thanks, Jeffrey. I'll see you
Peace,
later.
brother. I appreciate you.
All right, brother.